Coming up on AEA Amplified, Fastport Executive Director of Workforce Development and Government Programs, Dave Harrison.
From the Aircraft Electronics Association, this is AEA Amplified, a podcast for aviation's technology experts, with your host, Jeff Hill.
Hello, friends, and welcome back to another episode of AEA Amplified, sponsored by Blackhawk Aerospace, your one-stop, nose-to-tail upgrade service sales and MRO support network for light turbine aircraft. Because the best in the air starts with the best on the ground. Are you ready to outfly the ordinary? Learn more at blackhawk.aero. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. This is episode number 60. Today is Tuesday, May 5th, 2026. So happy Cinco de Mayo to everyone out there. And our guest today, we have Dave Harrison. He is the Executive Director of Workforce Development and Government Programs for Fastport. And we also are joined by Nick Brown. He is the AEA's Director of Workforce Development. And today we want to talk about a brand new program that I know AEA members are going to be excited about, and that is apprenticeships. So, Nick, let me start with you. First of all, I know you talk to a lot of repair stations and AEA members all the time. Just give us a quick update on what you're hearing out there. How serious is the workforce shortage in avionics right now? And what are shops telling you about their biggest hiring and retention challenges?
Hey, Jeff, happy to be here. I think that's a important question that the industry is faced with, and workforce and finding the right talent is a huge problem right now. And I think the way our industry is currently positioned is difficult for AA members, because when someone's leaving high school, there's really four paths that they're open to. The first is going to college. The second one is joining the military. And then the third is joining a trade that has a registered apprenticeship program, like when you think of construction or electricians or plumbers or HVAC, they all have a registered apprenticeship program. And then the last option that students are faced with when they're entering the career field, graduating from high school, is kind of the others. And that's kind of where avionics is currently. It's a trade that, if a student's leaving high school and they're not going to college or the military, or they're joining an apprenticeship program, they're either working at McDonald's or, applying for an AA member shop. So right off the bat, it's hard to find good talent coming into AA shops. So with this registered apprenticeship program, it brings our industry up forward and when kids are leaving high school, and more importantly, when they're, going home to talk to mom and dad about career options at the dinner table, they can talk about, hey, I'm interested in working at an apprenticeship program at an AA member shop and entering this industry. And there's career progression and there's training and there's all this. So really excited about this partnership, because it's going to move the needle dramatically for AA members in getting talent into their shops.
Well, Dave, let me ask you from the employer's perspective, if you're an avionics shop out there, why should a shop consider implementing an apprenticeship program? And how will this program help with their retention, consistency, and training? And basically, what's in it for them?
Well, you already hit one of them in your question. Registered apprenticeship done correctly is nothing more or less than a recruiting and retention tool that provides benefits to both the apprentice employee and to the employer. Now, besides the obvious ROI, if you're retaining people longer, you do the math on retraining people, loss of productivity, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then the hunt for people, because through registered apprenticeship, there are pipelines available that weren't otherwise. A company can post their jobs to apprenticeship.gov and all other places and have it scraped automatically from the NLX. So you're a small shop or a large shop or whoever it may be, it takes time. It takes time to post new requisitions. It takes time to do all those things. It takes a lot of those things out of the window. The other thing is, depending on the state, there's tax credits for registered apprenticeship for the employer. There are tax credits for being able to engage populations that registered apprenticeship bring to you. There's also tax credits for hiring veterans, which is one of the populations that registered apprenticeship helps employers hire much more productively. The last thing is that there are WIOA benefits and talent pipeline grants and hope grants, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, that vary from state to state and process, et cetera, that are available the moment you become a registered apprenticeship provider that you couldn't touch otherwise. I liken it to, going to the dance. The registered apprenticeship gets you inside the dance. You still got to go talk to somebody to dance with somebody. And you got to do more than that to get a phone number. So, the registered apprenticeship connects those dots. I will back up to something I said because the registered apprenticeship wholly gives an option to provide a GI Bill benefit to a person who is served just for going to work for someone. And it is a recruiting and retention boon if you're going after military experience. For example, when I came out of the United States Army, I was medically discharged, and I had no knowledge of any of this. It would have changed my career path if I'd have known that this option existed. Many employers don't know it existed. The benefit is called monthly housing allowance. And it's not used for housing per se. It's a stipend. It can be used by the veteran in any way they want. But by participating in a registered apprenticeship program and being a registered apprenticeship provider, an employer now can extend those benefits directly to that veteran who they're trying to hire or they have hired and have put into their apprenticeship program. That the amount of money that the veteran gets varies on the actual zip code where the training's going. It averages over $1,600 a month. We've got 30,000 people in our apprenticeship programs right now that are affiliated, and 21% of those are veterans. And of those veterans who are pulling benefits, on average, in a 2-year window, they're pulling up almost $34,000 directly to their pocket on top of salary. What's important to note there, Jeff, is the employer isn't having to keep up with money. So accounting doesn't work like that. You don't have to sort it. It's direct deposited straight to the veteran. But the employer, all that they have to do is certify the hours that veteran worked on a monthly basis. But you don't get there without the registered apprenticeship program. The registered apprenticeship program, once again, gets you in the door, and this gets you that. So you might imagine if you're trying to hire somebody leaving Fort Campbell, Kentucky, or something else, and trying to convince them to go to bum tussle somewhere, all right, you got to be able to articulate a career path and a measure of security in that move. By offering them a GI Bill benefit that's going to give them $30,000 extra or more than the salary, you're giving them real chance at viability in their transition and long-term sustainability. The other thing is, if you're the hanger over here that's offering GI Bill benefits to somebody, they're less likely to leave you than to go across the street or across the tarmac to somebody else because they're giving up, tens of thousands of dollars. So it's a win-win across the board.
Yeah, that's great to know because I know our shops, traditionally have looked to the military and the vets as a source of labor. So that's great information to know. Dave, let me also ask you, of course, just a few weeks ago, I think it was in early April, the AEA and Fastport together was officially recognized by the United States Department of Labor as a registered apprenticeship sponsor. So tell me, what exactly does that mean with that affiliation there with the Department of Labor?
As it applies to the AEA, it's what's called a national program standard, and and it get more in the weeds a little bit, but this is important. It's a group non-joint. So what that means is Company A, Company B, and Company C all can participate in the same standard, but it's their program. They don't have to, and they get to tailor to their specific needs. And what one company does is proprietary information away from another company. For example, I've got 30 national program standards that already exist in space, and I've got one that has a union shop that has CBAs that vary by locations and is very complicated to work with and requires 2 committees and a rite of passage and a crucible just to get something done. I got another company that's also a Fortune 500 company that is the last company in the world, say maybe Walmart, that would go union ever. Both of them have been operating the same standard for 9 years, and neither one of them know they're in the same standard because it's their program underneath that standard. So this allows each employer ownership of their process, and but it also allows a protection to keep the government out of your back door. Because under a group sponsored, for example, Fastport has its own sponsorship programs, has 55, 160 employers on it. If we go through a compliance review, they're going to ask for sample records from 4 or 5 people. So you've got 150 employers, and some of those employers have 300 or 400 or 500 or even more active apprentices. I've got employers that have been with us for a decade that have gone through 2 or 3 compliance reviews and never knew it happened because nothing got sampled from them. And no one at a shop or someplace is going to have to figure that stuff out on their own because we manage that. So what you have is you have the related training instruction that AEA provides, plus the combined industry approach. So we vetted this process, and the occupation is a framework that should fit 90+% of everybody's needs, if not more. We've already engaged, 10 plus employers just from our conference where we announced the standard. And we haven't had anybody want to do wholesale revisions on their training process or anything else. So it tells me that Nick and Gina from our team got it right and know how to pay attention to what the industry needs. The other thing is that what it means with the registered apprenticeship is now Fastport acting as AEA's agent, we can onboard an employers very quickly, and we, Fastport, can take 90% of, and will take 90% of the administrative burden off of an employer they otherwise would have if they registered by themselves or were sponsored their own program. That's, believe it or not, that's a simple answer, Jeff.
Okay, well, the next question might be, I don't know if it's a loaded one or not, but just walk us through just a little bit. How does the apprenticeship program actually work?
Well, the touch points that are really relative to an employer is going to be this. You have a conversation with Fastport's team, me, Gina, most likely. We call that a discovery meeting. That's where we figure out what exactly that employer needs, what they're looking for, how they're looking for it. We dispel kind of myths and rumors and other preconceived notions that invariably everyone has because they think it's this or that. And let me say this: if you think that it is that apprenticeship, registered apprenticeship, is for pipe fitters and electricians and bricklayers and union shops only, you would be so far off and so far incorrect in your misconception that I see it all the time. Less than 15% of the actual registered apprenticeship over 22,000 different programs and close to 14,000 occupations have anything to do with building trades or unions, etc. Okay. By and large, that is not the case. It's how it started, but that's not how it became. All right. So, and if you're also thinking that it's only, skilled trades or however you want to look at that, you're wrong. I worked on a management that holds multiple tracks as a career lattice, because a lot of times people go into management of the company, they will have several different hats they wear, and it allows for that kind of fluidity. So the idea of white collar, blue collar, all that, you got to get that thinking out of your head, because you can build apprenticeship occupations on top of apprenticeship occupations. I have partners that we built career ladders for, that they bridge from military service on a skill bridge program, go and get prior credit for that skill bridge towards a registered apprenticeship, walk right into the job as a registered apprenticeship, drawing that GI Bill benefit for the veterans, and they already give them credit for a fourth of their time because they spent that during the skill bridge. Well, that model hires well over 90% in conversion rate, and those kind of things, because it's a clear and concise career path. So what this does is registered apprenticeship allows employers pipelines and access to several resources they don't have otherwise. How it functionally works is this: onboarding conversation or discovery meeting with the employer, dispel any kind of rumors, walk them through the process. The process is pretty simple because all the hard work was done by AEA and Fastport, because the standard is written. You don't have to write a new standard. All you have to do is sign a document that is, and Nick, you can bear me out on this. The Appendix D is what they call it, an employer acceptance agreement, saying employers accepting this national program standard and they're going to participate in it. That's all it's saying. And that is the most straightforward, simple document that the federal government's ever come up with in their entire existence. And Nick, if you've ever seen anything that's less complicated than that, I owe you a beverage of your choice. But my point is, it's a very simple, straightforward document. It says they're participating. It doesn't obligate them to any kind of, demographics. It doesn't obligate them to a time. It doesn't obligate anything. They can do as much or as little as they like or as they need. And if they don't want to do it tomorrow, for whatever reason, they can stop. Nobody's coming to see them and taking their tiddlywinks. What happens is so they sign that document. That's the first step to get them registered. Second step is the training process. In apprenticeship world, they call it a work process schedule. Of course, the government's going to change the name and make it complicated. It is your training program. It is your occupational framework to get someone from whatever state they're in, as far as competencies are, and I speak in terms of competencies, okay, to the competency that employer needs them to be in order to be a professional, safe, productive person. So that work process or that training program, the employer looks at and says, okay, this works for me. As I said, we haven't anybody want to edit it. They look at it. It aligns with the related training the AEA is already set up. So it's as a turnkey as you can turnkey it. And so but they look at that, and if they need to nuance it, we have the authority to modify it up to 20%. Keep in mind, we talk about competencies. So the reason we talk about competencies is technology changes, equipment changes. We don't have to modify a document for 150 different employers every time something changes. So if we were talking a diesel technician per se, or automotive technician, we wouldn't talk about step by step on the document what to do to service brakes, because that could change depending on the vehicle, time, etc., technology. What we say is service brakes. What it takes to service those brakes and whether or not they achieve that competency is entirely up to the employer. The employer needs to get them to that point and then evaluate them and say, yes, Jack or Jill can service this or perform this function. I'll say it one other way, so maybe it falls through with everybody. If Nick and I both went to work at two different employers, and one of the core occupations needed, or core job functions needed for our occupation, is painting a wall, I might use a sprayer and a brush, but my company doesn't use a roller. Nick's company uses a sprayer, a different kind of sprayer, and a roller, and a different paint, and there's a different process for getting the paint ready. But the competency is paint the wall. How you get to paint the wall is between the employer and the employee. And the way we set this up, and this is important because I come from business, I don't come from academia, I don't come from the government. Mm-hmm. We design these things specifically to be employer user friendly. We don't want to force an employer to be a square peg pounding a round hole. You make it your program. Don't worry about anything else alignment wise. As long as you're not getting way out of the window we'll be able to modify it according to their exact needs. I know it's a long answer.
Yeah.
The other thing we would need is a pay progression, because one of the things by regulation is they start at one wage and they end up at another wage. I don't need 52 steps in that. I can have one. But I tell employers, look, give me the least somebody can make on day one walking in the door without experience working for you, regardless of location. Pick the least amount. We go with that, and the least they could make after the end of the period of what normally for the rest of your apprenticeship would be. And we use that as our pay progression. I need those three things. That's what I need from an employer. Then I'm gonna need the employer to do what they're already doing, keep their training records or keep training records. I don't want them. I want them to keep them. They're going to send me a single document every time they enroll an apprentice. The document only has 5 blocks for an employee, 3 blocks for them. There's an optional point that an employee could fill out. That electronically goes to my team. My team registers them, puts them in the rapid system. We do all those things so the employer doesn't have to. The only other thing I need them to do for certain on a regular basis is once a month, update any status changes. So if somebody leaves, somebody completes a program, somebody goes on leave, then that needs to be updated once a month. My team updates all that in the reporting systems. And if somebody completes, my team makes sure that that employer gets the national credential that their employee apprentice just earned. And then use that to help your own retention, because the more you blog about that, the more you talk about that, the more sense of culture and community you build around that, and the higher your retention goes. And we've got a decade plus of data that shows that consistently works if you use it that way. All right, I'm gonna take a breath now. If your ears aren't bleeding.
Yeah, that's great. That's awesome stuff. A lot of great information. And so correct me if I'm wrong. It sounds like then, so we talked about the model that we're working with. We have paid on the job learning, we have technical instruction, wage progression, and we have credentials. You know, what does the combination, I guess, of the on-the-job training and maybe classroom instruction look like in practice?
Well, we're going to change the lexicon a little bit and call it on-the-job learning.
Okay.
We've used OJT forever, but the only reason we're doing that to make it easy on the employers if they're talking to a local workforce investment board. For some reason, they're the only ones in the universe that don't recognize on-the-job training and use the term on-the-job learning. So to avoid any kind of conflict for the employers, for me, I don't care. We can call it a duck. It's still what it is. Okay. But to make it easier for, any kind of aviation company or any kind of employer, if you're in the middle of Wichita, Kansas, and you want to engage the local workforce investment board to access WIO dollars, it's easier for the workforce investment board to swallow the term on-the-job learning. So that let's do that just to make it easier on our employers. So going back to your question, if it combines every single aspect of technical instruction, wage progression, the credentialing, the classroom instruction in practice can look of varied ways. Keep in mind, this is designed for the employer to be able to do it easily, not for the employer to have to jump through 17 hoops and learn a new language in order to do it. Now, AEA has a myriad of related training instruction apparatuses. I'm not going to go into that. Nick can go into that because that's his baby, not mine. My baby marries up with his baby, and they make a good partner. Okay. Now, in the practice of related training instruction, because on-the-job learning is on-the-job learning. Okay. Theoretically, there's one person training one apprentice, and their job shadowing. But the reality is this: that apprentice is learning from multiple people. Okay. I just spent time. I'm not gonna say which employer is with, but somebody at Wichita's got 25 years in aviation, is training people, and he tells every person he trains the same thing. Don't just look at what I do. He says, I've been doing this 25 years, but I have not worked on everything on an aircraft ever once. There's a myriad of experience around you, and pay attention. And there's more than one way, oftentimes, to peel an onion. So the idea is they're learning from those who know, as opposed to those who have theory or are teaching who have never done it. It's like going to college. It's the only place you can learn business from somebody that never ran a business, which has always seemed an interesting juxtaposition to me. So the idea is that they're getting one-on-one training, but that one who's doing the training can change and evolve and can be a multiplier, and should be a multiplier. So on-the-job learning is in the function of doing the job and learning by doing. In the old teaching words, I think Nick said this in the presentation. I hadn't thought about this in a while, but I do, we do, you do, or the other effort where I do and then you struggle and then we do and then you do. And more of the Japanese type way of teaching STEM and things like that. The reality is how you get there is how you get there. All people and employers should know this. And this is probably the biggest liability in registered apprenticeship, and also the biggest strength simultaneously. Is you get the old crusty guys like me, that got gray hair and been around forever, and they know more and have forgotten more than most people know. And they have a tendency to be impatient with those who don't know. And they have a tendency to either not share information as readily as they probably should, because they're not training and preparing, and they don't understand. And employers that engage those people and say, look, we need your help. You're not going to be here forever. We are very grateful for your service, but we want to acknowledge that. But the thing is that we want you to leave this a better place. And you can leave this a better place, and you can make an impact that lasts generations. And if an employee is, generally speaking, if an employee is dedicated enough to stay around for a while, they're dedicated enough to try to do something to help that organization in the future. So, and that's where you got to play that space. So that's the on the job learning. It really falls into that. Related training, related training can be a classroom. It can be not a classroom. It can be combinations thereof. A lot of them are combinations, because keep this in mind. You got related training instruction AAA is providing, but if you provide training on new regulatory guidance, or on safety proceedings, or on how to get paid, or how to get, anything that supports you in that occupation is related. So all those things are related training. It's the employer's responsibility to make sure that happens. Use the things that make the most sense and get you from A to B, and does it in the most productive manner. Because the thing is what you invest in that person. And we're not talking about massive investment, because registered apprenticeship by itself alone shouldn't cost you anything more than what you are or you're willing to spend to get quality talent in your shop, in your hangar. And that's it. And if you're already training people, then you have an apprenticeship. You're just not getting benefits from it. And if you're not already training people and you're even thinking about this, it's because you don't have enough people, and you figured out, I got to grow somebody as opposed to steal somebody from somebody else.
Dave, I know there's been plenty of mention about potential financial incentives. How important is that piece for the employers? And are there any grants out there that AEA members may qualify for?
Well, okay. How important that is to employers, like me asking how important is chocolate cake to any particular person.
Very important.
Yeah, to some people, it is the most important, one of the most important things in the universe. There's other people who are allergic to chocolate, so there's varied answers to that. I will say this: there is money, and there is money that's going to be available. We're already connected to some of it, and we're going to make that happen. And there's liable to be more. The thing is that you should never, as a business, build any apparatus contingent upon grant funds. or even incentivized funds from performance. You can use it, you should use it, as long as it doesn't require you to functionally change your business. But if you build something just extensively on the basis of receiving funding, what happens when the funding runs out? It dies, and you lose all value, and all the work you put into it becomes for naught. So that being said, there is currently a advanced manufacturing performance fund for apprenticeship that's available, and AEA, the occupations so far qualify in that space. We are a designated vendor for that space, and we will be facilitating that. That is a fund that's paid to the employer. It's paid through the sponsor, so through Fastport/AEA, to the employer. The apprentice has to reach 91 days in the apprenticeship program in order for the funding to be there. The real steps from the employer is going to be one form, and then a performance valuation or progress report is what they call it on this one. Now that's current. That exists. That's been in place since January. Okay, and we're set up to facilitate that for anybody who has a corresponding occupation. Now, as of let's see, in 19 minutes, there are myriad of RFPs, requests for proposals, going into the Department of Labor that have already gone, but in 19 minutes is the drop dead moment. If it's not in by then, you're not getting it. That include defense industry base, which includes all aviation. It also includes several other sectors, and that is going in, and that will have some funding apparatus to it as well to incentivize apprenticeship programs. When that's going to be available, probably close to September, as far as actual funds. Could be as far out as October, depending on who gets the DIB, et cetera. That's not nearly as significant as another request for proposal that has already been submitted that totals $145 million. And they have sectioned it off by industry segments, defense industry base with aviation named in it, as well as advanced manufacturing is named in it. Each one of those potentially will have funds available for apprenticeship, and they look very similar to the advanced manufacturing fund I just talked about. We suspect, and this is not, I don't know, I don't have a crystal ball or anything else, but award limit for the DIB or any of those others in that case was up to $40 million. We would be shocked if there's anything less than 33 million. Now, the people managing the funds are going to keep some of that. Obviously, they have to pay salaries, and you keep the lights on. And so you got to figure that the proportion of that's going to go out to the employer. We don't know how much it's going to be. We know what they said framework wise. Anything I say a dollar amount is conjecture at the least, but I will tell you that most of them are going to settle somewhere around that 4K amount that will go to the employer. The thing is, again, there's only so much of that money, and it's going to go out, and it can be utilized. And if it sets up like the current funding, the employer can utilize it in any way. It's a fungible process, so they don't have to do certain things and pick up pennies on Tuesday and do revolutions in a counterclockwise way to use the money effectively. But those are out there. Now, as far as grants and other things, I made reference to this before. There is WIOA dollars, workforce investment boards. There are a bunch of them. There's not just one. Iowa alone has like 55 workforce investment boards. It marries well for a smaller organization or organization that has multiple locations and somebody responsible for that location, because that person who is either owns that shop or runs that shop or that runs that location needs to physically go and introduce themselves and participate in the workforce investment board meetings, because oftentimes they don't even know the WIB board itself doesn't know who's hiring for what, if they got registered apprenticeship programs and everything. And by being the virtue of being a registered apprenticeship program puts you on what's called the eligible trainer provider list by state. Eligible trainer provider list means you can go have a conversation about workforce investment dollars. Now, I can't tell you how exactly it's going to work because each one of those WIB boards does what the hell they want, when they want, how often they want, and that's an individual relationship that's got to be made. So again, that's like getting you into the dance. You got to go ask somebody to dance, and you got to flirt a little bit if you want to get anything out of that, you know. So I can get you there. I can get you in the room. I can get you the pass to get you in the room. You got to do the rest of that. Along with that, there's work opportunity tax credits that a lot of small employers, and you'd be surprised how many big employers don't actively use. WOTC credits, especially for a veteran. You take a veteran, say he was unemployed for 6 weeks and drawing unemployment, and they're technically disabled. They're drawing disability. That doesn't mean they're not functional. It just means they're drawing compensation disability for service. That person could mean up to $9,600 of tax credit for an employer just for hiring that one person. If the veteran didn't draw unemployment, everything's great. That's the minimum of $2,400. But that's only one category. It's not just veterans. There's multiple categories of people that work opportunity tax credits apply to, and it is fairly shocking to me how many employers don't take the option of doing that. Now, I don't want it misunderstood. WOTC happens whether you're in an apprenticeship program or not, but we just happen to walk you through that process. We will give you the information along. And so that being said, once the employer provides me employer acceptance agreement, they tell me the work process, the training program's good, and give me a pay progression. We can have, and I may be getting ahead of you on this, but we can have that employer registered in 24 hours. Rarely does it take more than 48. And that just has to do with how busy we are and how many things we got loaded. If I had nothing else going on, it might happen within the hour. Okay. But I've never not had anything else going on. But that being said, I have literally had a first conversation with an employer on a Wednesday, got all the paperwork signed, and they had already looked at work processes. So they agreed to the work process immediately, and they gave me a pay progression on Thursday. On Friday, we had an onboarding meeting with them where we lay out, this is how you process this document to us. This is what you do. This is how you start your GI Bill benefit process, because that's not a Department of Labor thing. GI Bill benefit's a VA thing. So it's a separate thing, and it's not going to start simultaneously. No way. But again, like we owe $1, by virtue of being a registered apprenticeship provider, the VA has to take your program and has to provide benefits on it. They don't have a choice. Congress told them they're going to, and they don't always like it, especially in the state approving folks. But you know what? I don't care. It takes care of veterans, and it's the way it should be. That being said, we have an entire package and a meeting that's going to happen with a person's expert on MHA and everything that an employer needs to know to do their part. And they'll be able to refer back to the links. It's not just a dead document. It's a link that we update. And we'll have tax credits in there. We'll have information about pursuing money. Again, we can't do it for you, but we can show you the path.
Well, Dave, I know I've kind of framed the conversation probably more from the employer perspective so far. Let me turn the attention just a little bit from if you're an avionics technician and look at it from their perspective. And this may be like asking if you like chocolate cake or not. But what does the opportunity look like for someone who's just trying to enter the field? And also, I'm sure it's very important that the apprentices are earning while they are learning. Is that correct?
Yeah, earn while you learn model. And so if you think about anybody in transition, and we're going to have transitioning people regardless. You have transitioning military, you got transitioning. 40% of the college students are working in a job that they could have got with a high school diploma right now. Okay. college graduates. And so, yeah, and then you're having more and more of those folks displaced. Then you're going to have some displacement. Look what happened to Oracle. Look what happened to other things. The market is changing. The Gulf Coast region, just in shipping, announced 7,500 job openings today. They're predicting in a year to double that based off of what's coming out of the federal government. Money demand side is high. All right. So I told my grandson something different than I told my daughter, his mother. Told his mother, go get a college degree. I told my grandson, unless you're going to STEM and specific occupations in STEM, or you're going into business from a college perspective, you are as good or better by going into a skilled occupation that has a training modality that has shared skill points that makes your skill sets transferable. My average apprentices make 40% more than a college graduate. And they're not going to be hunting a job. I got 30,000 of those folks that have gone through our programs. They're not hunting a job. And if they need a job, they can get a job and they have a career. And they didn't go into debt getting that career. They got paid while they learned that career. So if you start thinking about displaced worker, here I am, or you're thinking about other people, the smart companies, what they have done is they've used aptitude and aptitude testing as their threshold, not necessarily matching job skills or job titles, which is the worst thing you can do. You get people who've got people coming out of the military, and they say, I don't want somebody who worked in aviation. Why? There's small vehicle repair folks and things like that. Got every aptitude you need and maybe more. There are combat folks who never, they spend as much time tearing things up as they did assembling things, but they had the aptitude. I've got a program with a very large company that has a skill bridge for diesel technicians. And their first ladder on it is Tech 1. And I built an apprenticeship ladder for them. They go through the skill bridge. They're done with Tech 1. Then they move to Tech 2 when they go to work at whatever job they chose. That allows the employer, one, to assess that person. They do everything on that based off of what an aptitude test. They don't care about what the military occupation is. They say, all right, do you have the capacity to do this or not? And that's what they're testing. And that's their primary threshold. So I'm always trying to tell employers, look, there's the way you used to do things is okay. Nothing wrong with it, other than the fact that it's not going to meet your needs tomorrow or even today. We ran out of people to steal from each other. And other industries are competing for the same people that you want. It's not just your own industry anymore. So where you might have been focused on the other shop over here and here and here at where you're located at, and then that's graduated to everybody. Now it's graduated to, okay, you got somebody in transition, has no idea what they want to do next and are lost. And everybody's competing for the same people who can show up on time, pass a drug screen, are trainable and can work with people. That's it. And if you have the aptitude to do the job, those other things, those skill sets are what everybody should be after.
Nick, did you want to add on to that?
Yeah, piggyback on that. I mean, Dave's absolutely right. I think the benefit of an apprenticeship program to the apprentice in our world in aviation is if you have someone that is leaving high school and wants to enter our field, they typically have to get their A&P license, or that's usually the first step to the process of entering our industry. And like Dave was saying, is in academia and coming from that world, I can tell you, and everyone who has kids knows that there's been a huge push to go to college, go to college, go to college. And it's been like that for the past 20, 30 years. So these kids that want to enter our field, their first step is, all right, well, I'm going to go to college and get my A&P license. And now by that point, you've taken out student loans, you're paying off debt. And then a lot of these 147 schools are promoting the airlines. So they're not coming into our shops. They're going, straight to the airlines, or think they're going straight to the airlines. But with an apprenticeship program, and this is a benefit for the apprentice and the shops, is you can tell an apprentice that they can get their A&P license through OJT. And it's like Dave said, it's the earn while you learn model of you're getting paid and you're keeping your logbooks and you're working towards your A&P certification. So I think, like Dave said earlier too, like this administration is really trying to break that mold. I know the DOL is looking for 1 million apprentices a year, and that's kind of starting. Like this week is the apprenticeship week. So there's a lot. It's really good timing. Everything's kind of falling into place. And by having an apprenticeship program, you're gonna draw a better candidate pool into your shop.
And once again, we're visiting with Fastport Executive Director of Workforce Development and Government Programs, Dave Harrison, here on AEA Amplified, along with Nick Brown, AEA Director of Workforce Development, sponsored by Blackhawk Aerospace. Nick, let me turn to you as again here. I presume that the credential that the program is aligned with is the Certified Aircraft Electronics Technician, or the CAET. How does the apprenticeship pathway align with CAET certification and competency requirements?
So like Dave said, there's two parts to the apprenticeship program. There's the on-the-job learning, which most shops aren't going to have to change anything for that. That's always been the model of, I'm going to hire someone and then I'm going to show them the way we do things. So that part of the apprenticeship program really doesn't change. I think the second part, the related technical instruction, is probably the most difficult for AEA members, even though you have a lot of options. I mean, basically it's just the book learning, and you need 586 hours of book learning to accommodate the apprenticeship program. So the CAET is really the missing piece, or it plugs in directly to the related technical instruction. It's the industry recognized credential that the AA's workforce committee kind of all accepted as this is what an entry-level technician should need to know. And then it also aligns to the CAT Advanced, which is kind of the level 2 of that. So it fits in exactly with the apprenticeship program, and it gives the apprentices an industry recognized credential that otherwise they wouldn't have. It also helps shops with regarding the RTI, like Dave said earlier. I mean, it could be, you have a lot of options for RTI. You could just, crack open the FAA handbooks and spend some time studying that. But I think the best thing, my advice to shops, is to be meticulous with the RTI. This generation of anyone who's hired a new technician kind of knows is, if you ask someone to go home and study things, or, hey, I want you to read this manual on your off time, or I want you to do these things, that all ties into the RTI. But a lot of these newer technicians, like when work is done for the end of the day, they're done. They're not doing the extra things. With an apprenticeship program, I think that kind of it hires the quality of candidates. And by saying, hey, you're going to be in this apprenticeship program, this is what it looks like, here's the RTI. And the AEA already has all those options available. We've got online courses in Aero, we've got conventions, we've got regionals. All that training accomplishes the RTI aspect of that. So the CAET and the certifications that we've developed just take the apprenticeship program to a higher level. It's qualifying what the workforce committee is saying an entry-level technician needs to know, and it also applies to the apprenticeship program. So it makes everything much more professional and industry recognized.
Well, and I might add that you also teach a CAET prep course. And so anyone that's interested in taking that, I think it runs over the course of 2 days. It's a virtual class. You can do it online with Nick as the instructor. So if you're interested in the CAET, I would encourage you to check out that course, because it will certainly help you out, and a great service that Nick and the AEA provide. Dave, let me turn it over to you. And I think you alluded to this earlier, and just elaborate on it if you could. I think one interesting point is that repair stations can customize this program. How flexible is the framework?
Well, the pat answer is 20%. We can modify the framework up to 20%. But again, Jeff, if you remember my example of paint the wall or those kind of things, or the example of the brakes, if we're speaking in COMSTI language, that 20% is kind of a varied quantity, because if it requires 15 steps to do it now, or to do it in a certain COMSTI, but then there's another that same COMSTI for somebody else requires 20 steps. We're just going to change the COMSTI language. We're not going to add 20 steps. So there is absolute flexibility and the ability to tailor and modify. Now, I once was asked this question when I built a registered apprenticeship program for the largest trucking association in the planet. And somebody says, well, how much can I modify the driver? And talking about CDLA, heavy truck. And I said, well, there's things, there's flatbed drivers, there's these kind of drivers, there's people who do things. So you're going to have some variance there, those things. And you have specifics in your company on how you process loads, you accept loads, you do this. All those things are the variance. But what you can't get away from is you can't say, I'm not going to train on backing a truck. Backing a truck is a core skill set that you need to confirm, even though this person went through a CDL school, that they can actually do. And your own liability says you better make sure they can do it before you put them out there and you end up in a lawsuit that you're not going to win because you didn't verify their skill sets. So you can't get away from the core things, but we can modify how we get to those core things. And then from there, you can modify virtually anything. Does that make sense?
It does. Yep. Nick, let me ask you from the association perspective, do you and the AEA see the apprenticeship program as a long-term workforce strategy and not just training? And I guess, how do you see this reshaping the avionics labor pipeline over the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, one could surmise, since I make my living and I've dedicated myself to this for over a decade, and I left a Fortune 400 company in a job that I probably wouldn't go get fired from, to go do this madness as a contractor, that I believe in it, and I do. Here's why. I was analyzing, the aging of the workforce and other things, and the effect it has on everything. And this was reinforced during the last administration when we had a pipeline that got hacked. And all of a sudden, we have no oil flowing through that pipeline. Well, the administration turned around and looked at the national tank truck carriers and said, help us fix this. And they said, we'd love to. We don't have the people. They said, we'll pay extra. We'll do things. We'll waive the regulations. We'll do all these. Help us. We'd love to. We don't have the people. You may remember during COVID, there were hundreds of ships waiting to be unloaded outside and just sitting there. Help us. We would love to. We don't have the people. So I'm not a smart guy. I used to jump out of planes for a living, and I may or may not have done it successfully every time. But the reality is this: the more difficult it is for the supply chain to work, the more expensive it is for everyone. Period. Supply and demand always works. It's like gravity. And it always is going to drive the train. I didn't want my grandchildren to pay $30 for a loaf of bread. And if you look, none of us here on this call, I don't know who's younger, Nick or Aaron, but none of us here is a babe in the woods. We have some perspective on the universe, and we've been up the road and with or without a paddle and all those kind of things. We know that what you used to spend for something not that long ago is now dramatically different. Inflation happens for several reasons, but at the core of it is how much it costs to make that thing, to get that thing, to move that thing. And those things matter. The same thing with people in critical occupations. Aviation is critical to the supply chain. It's critical to the defense industry base. It's critical. And to have the people who can keep the damn thing in the air is critical. You can't have one without the other. And the more you got to find them, the more expensive it gets to perform that critical task. And the more expensive it gets, that is a national economic issue. It's a national security issue. So I think it is absolutely essential. It is long-term. We are behind. If you think what Nick said, I will add something to what Nick said about education for years, pushing for college. It's been over 40 years, Nick, that a guidance counselor only got evaluated over whether or not how many people went to college, never got evaluated for how many people went over here to this tech school or over here or learned these skill sets or anything like that. The person who keeps their electricity on and wired their house was left behind by them in most cases, as you well know. All right. So we are at such a deficit from a skills outlook in this country that we are desperately trying to figure out how we're going to build a ship that other countries that we consider to be third world countries can do in their sleep. And we haven't done in 50 years. We're trying to figure out how to get things from point A to point B in a more cost-efficient fashion. And we're struggling because the one thing we don't have is human capital who's been trained to do the job. And if you're a central cog in that wheel, and I kind of feel like that you guys have central cogs in the aviation space, because without you, we're kind of hosed. Okay. So to me, this is not a flash in the pan. It's not because this president said this, because I've been doing this since the Obama administration, and it has been a feature of every single administration that I've ever been part of. And this one has said he wants 1 million. And he formed 3 different government agencies to give a plan together to include education, to include commerce, and to include labor. So this isn't going away because supply and demand isn't going away, Jeff. And the demand is there. And it's going to get worse if we don't do something about it. And then the premium cost for Blackhawk or anybody else to get someone in their location who can do the job is going to go up so incrementally high that you're going to have businesses fold. That's just what's going to happen. We've seen it happen. It's happening today in all sorts of industry segments. So yes, if you ask me, I'm going to tell you, if you're not doing an apprenticeship program and you're training people, you're absolutely insane. You're not thinking about anything besides what's happening tomorrow or in this quarter. And you're going to follow the way of so many other businesses that they're going to go, I wonder what happened over there. Because there ain't nobody there. Because you're not going to have anybody to pull the right lever and turn the right switch and screw the right thing in. And you just can't. So I can give you a billion reasons why it's essential that we make a transition that has a mirrored track with education. I'm not saying education is not important, but to me, education, training, same thing. You can't educate if you're not trained. Nick taught school. Nick, how many students could you ever teach effectively who weren't trained on how to behave in the core fundamentals? All you were doing is keeping them trying to kill themselves and somebody else.
Exactly.
You weren't educating them because you couldn't. You got to have a core of training before the education happens or that coincides with it. You can't work with somebody. I can't work. It's like trying to train a Tasmanian devil who's pissed off. Not going to happen. I got 2 choices. Get away from it or put it down or lock it up. So Jeff, you're never going to get me to sit there and tell you. And the other thing is this: if you give a damn about veterans and you're calling yourself veteran friendly, or what you should be is veteran ready, and you're wanting them, and you don't provide them with a GI Bill benefit that they've earned, that you could give them by simply signing a document, approving a training process you're already doing, and giving a pay progression, and then once a month updating their hours that they've worked 12 times a year. If you can't do that, you're not military friendly. You're not military ready. You don't give a damn about it. You're just talking. All right, now you got to be fired up.
Nick, did you want to add anything from the association's perspective on that?
Yeah, I mean, Dave hit the nail on the head. I think the unseen benefits of apprenticeship program are the soft skills, like Dave was kind of alluding to. Is I think the landscape's changed in workforce development across the U.S. is, for us specifically, when a shop is looking to hire someone, their main priority is experience, and they want to bring someone on that already has experience. And the reality nowadays is those people don't exist, or they're not looking for a job. So the reality is we have to refocus our onboarding process and start focusing on training the technicians. And an apprenticeship program does that wonderfully. And like I said earlier, I think the unseen benefit of that is you can now weed people out based off of their soft skills. And that's one of the, I go to a lot of conferences and other, like ATEC with the Part 147 schools. And that's been a really big topic right now, is soft skills. And these kids coming out of school, especially the post-COVID thing, is they don't know how to be a professional on the shop floor. So like Dave said, even if you can train them all the skills, if they don't have those soft skills, they're not going to be a good technician. So by making an apprenticeship program your default hiring process, and you're training them the skills, you now have enough candidates to be able to, if they don't have the soft skills, to weed them out and just move on to the next one. And my goal with this program in the next 5 to 10 years is that AAA member shops aren't having a problem hiring people. Like, that's off their plate right now. Now they're just focused on training and retaining them. And I think an apprenticeship program does that.
All right. So then, Nick, for AAA shops, the members out there who are listening here, what are the first steps that they need to take to get involved?
I think this is the best part about this whole conversation, is because of how easy Fastport has made it. Like Dave said earlier, I mean, 95% of the administrative burden is on their plate. They're taking that off of you. And I know there's some AA members that already have an apprenticeship program and are taking on administrative burden. So the benefit of having Fastport is they're going to handle everything. Gina's amazing. Dave's great. They're going to handle all the administrative stuff for you. So there's really no reason not to do it. And to answer your question, I mean, the first step is it's as easy as contacting me, and then I connect you with Dave and Gina, and then within the week you're having a discovery call meeting and starting the process. And again, I just to be clear, I mean, like Dave said, shops are already doing this. You already have all the tools in place. You're already training them. You may need a little bit help with the RTI, but the AA has all those resources available. And with Fastport's help, I mean, you guys are up and running very quickly.
And of course, AA members can contact you, Nick. They can call you directly. Your number is 816-366-5102. And or they can also email you directly, which is nickb@aaa.net. That's nickb@aaa.net, to learn more about how to get started and take those first steps. Dave, I know you answered this earlier, I think, in terms of how quickly a shop can get get that program up and running. And it sounded like it was within a day or two. But I guess the other big question is, how much does it cost?
Well, first off, because we are contracted with the Department of Labor operating in transportation, it doesn't cost the shop anything for us to do what we do. Now, as long as we're contracted, we for some reason we lose a contract. We've been at it for 10 years and we're on multiple iterations of it. But if some reason things change or something else, then we might have to work out something else. But I'm telling you, our yield point on outside framework on apprenticeship, because we do apprenticeship services in spaces that aren't in transportation because people needed help. And it's such a low threshold. The ROI is still there. So, but we don't really talk about that at this point. At this point, it doesn't cost them anything. We're going to do it, and we already got the system built in place. And to something you talked about a minute ago, and Nick talked about, and I'm restating really, shops and people looking for experienced people that know everything. It was likened in 2012 by a very brilliant man who sounded like he had an 8th grade education and was born on the bayou, but he actually had a 160 IQ, and most people didn't know it, which I loved him for it. But we were talking about the silver tsunami, the aging of the workforce, and I had written a paper about it. And he summed it up like this. He said, everybody's looking for the unicorn, the fully mature unicorn that can do everything a unicorn can do. The problem is everybody went and got more unicorn herders, unicorn hunters, and bigger corrals and trucks to haul unicorns, but there's no more unicorns. There's less unicorns. So unless you start breeding and training your own unicorns, you're not going to have a unicorn or enough of them. And the experienced person who's turnkey walking in the door, yeah, everybody wants that person. But everybody wanting that person is a problem. Because if there hasn't been cases, and I am sure there is, where somebody got offered a little more money or a sign-on bonus, and then they just turned around, rolled all their tools right out of that hangar into another hangar because of that, if they're willing to jump for that, you're not going to keep them when you give them a sign-on bonus because somebody else is going to give them one. And you're going to have the same problem. And then sooner or later, that person's gone. And there's not somebody to replace them. You better grow your own, or you're not going to be around in 10 years for most of the players. Even the big people, even the big players in space are having the same problem.
All right, gentlemen, final question for both of you. Let's start with Nick. Any final thoughts or anything that I missed that you want to mention for our listeners?
Yeah, this was a great conversation. I love how fired up Dave gets talking apprenticeships, and I think it's something we can embrace as an industry. But just to add, this country was built on apprenticeships, and I think our industry has kind of missed the boat on that with the registered side. I mean, again, you're still acting as an apprenticeship provider with providing training and all that. But I think this really is going to be a huge benefit, not only the industry and all the members, but just embracing our apprenticeship culture and making it registered and official, I think is going to be great for the future of this industry.
Dave, how about you?
You notice Nick said that Gina Mullinax on our team is amazing and called me great. Tells you how he rates both of us. So Gina has done 99% of the work on this, and he is right. She's got this nailed. Our whole modality here is simple, scalable, and sustainable. If it's not simple, scalable, and sustainable, we change it to be simple, scalable, and sustainable. And if we can't do that, we usually don't. So we're not going to complicate this. And as long as employers aren't trying to complicate this, they can get benefits of it pretty seamlessly and realize the ROI of it pretty quickly. It's all about creating an ethos around a community and a culture. And if you do that, your retention goes up, period.
Very good. Dave Harrison with Fastport, Nick Brown with AEA. Thank you, both of you, for joining us here on AEA Amplified. And again, just a reminder there, AEA member companies who are interested in this apprenticeship program and the partnership with Fastport can reach out to Nick and get started at 816-366-5102 or email him at nickb@aea.net. That's nickb@aea.net. And you can also check out the Fastport website at fastport.com. Before we sign off, I do want to let you know that Registration has now opened for all 6 of the AEA regionals later this year. Join us for 2 days of training at a location near you. You can register and also make hotel reservations at aea.net/regionals. And finally, the AEA has several opportunities to elevate your avionics expertise by taking training courses at the association's headquarters in Lee Summit, Missouri. The AEA also offers virtual live classes if you are unable to travel. Seating is limited in each of those classes and they do sell out. So check out the course schedule today and enroll at aea.net/training. And that is going to wrap it up for today. We hope you can join us again soon for another episode of AEA Amplified, sponsored by Blackhawk Aerospace, your one-stop nose-to-tail upgrade service, sales, and MRO support network for light turbine aircraft. Because the best in the air starts with the best on the ground. Are you ready to outfly the ordinary? Learn more at blackhawk.aero. Thanks again to Dave Harrison and Nick Brown for joining us. And until next time, for our producer engineer, Aaron Ward, this is your host, Jeff Hill, wishing you blue skies ahead. So long, everybody.